This holiday, give the gift that says, let's cancel plans and just lounge. MeUndies has dropped a new holiday collection, and it's made for maximum cozy. We're talking soft as snow, ultramodal fabric, festive prints, and loungewear so comfy your couch might get jealous. Onesies, hoodies, joggers, even delightfully quirky holiday designs. You're welcome. Knock out all your holiday gifting needs with deals up to 60% off at MeUndies.com/comfort. Enter promo code COMFORT. That's MeUndies.com/comfort, code COMFORT.
As a small business owner, have you ever felt overwhelmed by the pressure of choosing the right hire or leading a team? Or have you ever found yourself tolerating a bad hire because you fear trying and failing again as you repeat the hiring process? If so, you're not alone, and you are in the right place. Welcome to the Growing Your Team podcast. The Growing Your Team podcast teaches business owners like you to expand your unique business by teaching you to master the hiring and team management process. Hiring and managing a team does not have to be a challenge. You just have to learn to do it right. And the Growing Your Team podcast teaches you how to become a confident leader who hires right every single time. Now, let's jump into the show where each episode you will learn tips on how to identify what type of help you need on your team, how to source amazing candidates, how to conduct interviews that lead you to your ideal team member, how to onboard successfully, and how to lead every person in your business so you have a team of rock stars who you are happy to pay every single paycheck. So let's jump in and teach you how to hire like a pro. Hello, Jamie Van Kuyk here, and welcome back to the Growing Your Team podcast. All right, so we talk a lot about hiring and identifying the signs that it's time to hire. And just to give you a quick recap, because it's so important to take a moment and recognize that these signs exist in your business. The 4 signs are: 1, you're saying no to your ideal client; 2, you are losing customers because your customer service levels have changed and your customers are no longer happy; or you're losing customers before they can become your customers because you're taking too long to respond to their inquiries; 3, you want to expand, but you can't because all your time and focus and energy needs to be on what you're currently doing versus opening that second location, expanding your product offering, expanding to a product if you are service-based, all those things that you want to do in your business, but you can't because you just don't have time. And then finally, sign number 4 is that you lack skill or knowledge, and it's now more cost-effective and a better use of your time to hire an expert versus do it yourself or learn how to do it yourself. And so today, I want to dive a little bit deeper into that 4th sign, because sometimes this is the sign that is hardest to really identify because of the fact that there's a lot of things at every stage of running a business you do need to learn how to do and how to do well as a business owner. As you elevate in your business and you take more on, there are things and doors that are going to open that didn't open before. And even if you don't have to be the day-to-day execution expert, you need to understand what this is and what it's like and how to measure if someone else is doing it well. So knowing that it's time to hire because you lack skill or knowledge is difficult. And because it is difficult, we often stand in our own way of success, right? We do this because we think that we should learn, and we do this because we look at the cost of hiring that expert. So even though, yes, we should be hiring because that return on the investment is there, we don't do it because all we see is a price tag right in front of us when we go out to explore what would it be like to hire somebody. And we fail to take in consideration what it will be like if we don't hire someone to help in this area. So let's dive a little bit into this and look specifically at hiring. Because if you don't have amazing skills to hire a great team, you have two options. You learn how to hire a great team, or you delegate the responsibility to someone who has the skills already to help you hire a great team. Unfortunately, I have seen so many business owners not do this, which for me, I'm kind of shocked in a lot of ways because it's the struggles that I heard over and over and over again when I was doing market research, when I was first exploring the opportunity and possibility of starting a consulting business, that this was the struggle that people brought up time and time again. I heard people say, it took me 8 years to find good hires. It took me hiring for the same position 5 times before I found someone that would work out. I was once in a business learning class. I actually forget what the topic was at this point in time, but the person that was facilitating it said, turn to the person sitting next to you and share with them one exciting thing that happened this week. And the person I was sitting next to had no idea who I was. We didn't get an opportunity to talk and get to know each other before the class had started. And he turned to me and he goes, I'm so excited because after 7 years, I finally figured this hiring thing out. And I finally feel like I have the skills and abilities to make good hiring decisions. And then, of course, I turned to him and I'm like, hey, I'm Jamie Van Kuyk. My business is Growing Your Team, where we teach people how to hire like a pro so they don't have to go through 7 years of poor hiring decisions before they get it figured out. And then I shared with him my positive thing that happened for the week. And of course, at first, he felt so embarrassed. He goes, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that to someone that this is their expertise. But the truth is, that's the reality. The truth is, we often let ourselves stand so much in our own way of making the decisions and getting the education and getting the support that we need to be successful. And we put up with doing things poorly for years, hoping and praying that next time will be better. And so once again, you need to learn how to hire well, or you need to delegate the task of hiring well. And with hiring well and learning how to do it, you do not want to learn through trial and error. That is an expensive way to learn. It's a time-consuming way to learn. Because let's look at what probably happened in that 7 years that one person was not getting good team members. Retention was low. So they probably had to keep rehiring over and over and over again. So they're always in this cycle. They're probably then having these mindset issues where they're just like, oh, is this person even going to stay? Like, what is the point of this? Can I just do without this team member? Every time they probably thought they were getting ahead, something would happen with the team member to limit their ability. They were probably spending a lot of time managing team members that weren't working out well versus spending their time where they should be in their business. The team members were probably doing things incorrectly, which meant rework on the team members' part, which meant they weren't doing the work that they should be doing next because they were reworking, or that business owner was standing up in the positions where this team member was lacking and doing the work for them. So there's a lot of stuff and negative stuff going on because you have the wrong people, because you're learning through trial and error. It's expensive. It's not just the paycheck that you're giving that person. And yes, if they're not doing their job, you're wasting money with each paycheck that person gets. But there's also the other costs in the business. So the cost of upset customers, if their work impacts the client and customer. There is the cost on your time, which is significant. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't want to learn through trial and error, because it's not that you go out, you quickly identify what went wrong, and then you're able to fix it. Learning through trial and error with hiring can take months to identify what went wrong and to course correct. And the problem I've seen with people that want to go out and learn through trial and error is the fact that they blame so much on the candidates. Oh, there's just not good candidates out there. oh, people just don't want to work nowadays. And guess what? A lot of those things aren't true. And if you're learning through trial and error versus getting the support you need to recognize that you are typically 99% of the time the cause of that team member being poor for your business. You, not them, you, because you made the decision to hire them, or you didn't do your proper due diligence during the hiring process to identify if they're the right fit. So learn. If you're going to hire yourself, you need to learn what it means to hire well, and learn by getting the support and education, not just by testing things out in the process to see if it works. All right, so let's talk quickly about delegating, or maybe not quickly, because I have a lot that I want to say here. So there's a lot of benefits that come with delegating hiring. But first but foremost, I want to say that when we talk about delegating, we are not necessarily talking about delegating to someone else within your organization. Yes, you might hire someone that actually is skilled at hiring and they're able to support you, that works inside your organization. And if that is the case, use them. That person's there. If they have the time with their balance on their other assignments and tasks and responsibilities, use them. But one of the problems that I see is most people delegate hiring to someone in their business who has no skills to do well at hiring. So what is going on? Instead of you learning through trial and error, now you and another team member are learning through trial and error versus getting the actual training and support to do it well. So a lot of times then, some of the best things to do is work with a recruiter, work with someone that's going to help you, whether this is your HR consultant, whether it's someone like growing your team, or someone else that can help you find the right person for your business. So let's look at the benefits of working with someone external to your business to help you. And yes, this comes with a cost. But just like hiring for any position in your business, the cost becomes worth it when you hire the right person to produce the right work for your business. So if you're hiring the right person to support your recruiting efforts, you should then get a positive ROI. And the biggest thing I want you to look at, whether you're going to get a positive ROI by delegating recruiting, is time. So once again, when we talk about the signs that it's time to hire, and we talk about that you lack skill or knowledge, one of the things that I say over and over again is there comes a time in your business where it's more cost effective for you to hire an expert than it is for you to learn it, because your time is valuable. And yes, I believe that there's certain things in the hiring process that you should learn how to do, even if you're working with a recruiter. But if you're going to work with a recruiter, it means you don't have to learn everything. So time is a huge, huge savings. So when you look at the cost of working with a recruiter, one of the things I want you to ask yourself is, what is the value of my time? What do you charge your clients if you work with them on an hourly basis? Or if you've ever figured out what your time is that it takes to produce something, and you factor that into your cost to provide that service or create that product, what is your time worth as the head of your business? Now, let's look at the time it takes to find a good hire and how a recruiter can take some of that time off your plate. So I'm going to share with you two quick examples of recent clients. So these are projects that I've either just finished or we're currently actively working on. So for the one client, I was helping to fill a part-time admin role, right? So this is a part-time role. It's not even a full-time role. The person was making roughly around $20 an hour when they come on. So if you're looking at this and the amount of money that is going to be put towards this position over the course of a year is a pretty small number, and especially when you compare with the cost of recruiting. But this business owner understood the value of their time and said, I don't have time for this, and what I'm going to pay growing your team to do the recruiting is well worth it because of the time that it's going to save us. So when we track everything when it comes to what we do on our projects. So for this project, 102 resumes were received before we shut down the the application process only because we're like, let's start going through these resumes and get through these candidates, and then we'll open it back up again if we need more candidates. 102 resumes. Yes, you need to review all resumes that come in. We don't know, is the first resume that came in the person that is best for the job or the 102nd one? So if someone applies, we should be respectful enough to review their resume. How much time does it take to review 102 resumes? Well, let me tell you this. The less skilled you are at reviewing resumes, the more time it's going to take. So for myself, who reviews resumes all the time, it's going to take me a fraction of the time that's going to take you to review those resumes. So we went through all those resumes and we identified 19 that were good for interviews. So we reached out to the first 10 of these. So we scheduled 10 interviews. These were 30-minute interviews. That was 5 hours of time that needed to be set aside for interviews. Now that was 5 hours of time that needed to be set aside to conduct the interviews. That does not include any of the time that it takes to coordinate those interviews. So while our process is very simple, it's streamlined, we still had to send out communication to every candidate, every one of those candidates. We still then needed to review our notes and make decisions afterwards on if they're ready for the next or should go on to the next round of interviews. We still had to communicate to every candidate that was a part of this process on whether they're moving forward or not after their first round of interviews. So that 5 hours was just the time that was set aside to complete interviews. So there's more time in the communication and the coordination and note-taking and the summaries and everything that goes on. That was 5 hours for 10 candidates. When the decision was made on who to hire, we were in the process of scheduling those additional 9 interviews. So for this case, that didn't happen. But it could have if one of those 10 that we initially scheduled to interview wasn't the right person. But it just so happened in that first batch of 10, the right person was there. So my client interviewed one person for a second round interview. Only one person, and said, this is it. This is the person. I don't want to talk to anybody else because I don't want to lose this person. So let's stop with the scheduling of those additional 9 interviews and let's move forward and make this person an offer. My client knew that while she only interviewed one person, an additional 9 people, because remember the first batch, there were 10 people, 10 interviews scheduled, were reviewed by someone else. So someone already did due diligence, talk to other candidates. This was just a second round for her to say pretty much yay or nay. So my client, instead of having to review 102 resumes, go through 5 hours of interviews, additional time scheduling and coordinating and everything, had one interview and conversation with a candidate that lasted 45 minutes total when they made their decision. So they had 45 minutes of their time versus I think if I went through and looked at everything, probably about 8 hours or so of mine and my team's time for this project. So they knew the value of their time. Having to only spend 45 minutes of their time was well worth the cost of someone doing everything else. And what I didn't mention and did not add into that time was all the time that went into preparing for those interviews. The time that went to writing the job post, which we did for them, the time that went into writing the interview guide. So when we did our interview, we had a standard list of questions that were custom selected based off of that position. And for my clients, they had an interview guide for when she did that one interview of what to ask. So now let's look at another position. So this position is a high-level position within an organization. We posted the job. This one is currently open, so we are still getting more applicants, but at the time of this recording, we have received 73 applications. Of those 73 applications, it has been narrowed down to 15 interviews that have been scheduled. These interviews, because it's a higher level position, are 45 minutes each that myself and my team are conducting. That's 11 hours of interviews. 11 hours of interviews. Do you have time in your busy schedule to do 11 hours of interviews? And we can't split it up for this first round over multiple weeks, it has to really be, for this level position, about 2 weeks total that we're doing those 11 hours of interviews, because candidates don't want to go to an interview and be told that it'll be a month before they hear whether they're moving on or not. So you got to do interviews fairly close together in time. We then have an additional 8 candidates that came in over the weekend that we identified are a good fit. So that's 73. We had 8 additional candidates so not of the original 15 that were coordinating to get interviews scheduled. So that's another 6 hours of interviews that are going to be scheduled. So in total, if all of those 8 candidates do schedule an interview, that is 17 hours of interviews that Growing Your Team will do on behalf of this client in order to identify who's moving forward that they will spend time talking with. So far, out of the 15 interviews that we've conducted, 4 are the right fit to move forward. So my clients only have to do those final interviews versus doing every interview. It really helps them save time because they don't have the time to stop their work and do this entire process because they have a business to run, because they have other responsibilities. If they had all this extra time, chances are they wouldn't be hiring for this position to begin with. Another benefit of working with a recruiter is they help weed out the right people from the process. So you might be listening to this and saying, well, if you're only moving 4 people forward and you interviewed 15, could you have weeded out those 4 or identified those 4 people sooner in the process so that way you didn't have to do 15 interviews? And that's what a lot of people try to do. And let me tell you, in a lot of ways, that does not work. So recruiter helps you weed out the right people, whether it's the people you're saying no to or the people you're saying yes to. Because when people try to do this on their own without an interview, without knowing exactly what to look for, without having that proper training, what do they do instead? The first way they do it is they try to dissect a resume. They try to create a whole life or career story around a sheet of paper. And let me tell you, a resume doesn't tell you everything. There are resumes of candidates that we look at and we say, oh my gosh, this person is the perfect candidate. They have everything we need. They've pretty much done the job in a company exactly like ours. This person is a shoo-in to go to that final round of interviews. And then we talk to the candidate and they're not a fit because the personality that we're looking for, that means they're going to get along well with the team, isn't there. Or there's other things where it's like when we dig into what they did, it's like, okay, well, they have experience in this area, but it doesn't line up with the actual experience that we need or show that they can do what we need inside this organization here. So we don't want to dissect a resume because a lot of times we act on our biases and we make some assumptions and all this stuff there. Resumes are just a gatekeeper for an interview. We don't hire people off their resumes. We hire people based off interviews. And the other way where people try to weed out candidates before that interview to reduce the number of interviews is by making candidates do the work in the process instead of the hiring manager or the employer. And they do this by having them do testing and filling out lengthy applications and like all these things before an interview. And they say, well, the people who really want the job will stay in the process and apply. And they'll do this thing and they'll do this step. The problem is they've never had a conversation with you. This is something that we've talked about before on the podcast. So they have no incentive to do this because there are other jobs out there. Candidates are going to look for the company that's going to value them during the hiring process, and making a candidate jump through hoops before a conversation is not showing a candidate that they're valued. So you will most likely have great candidates that say nope when you ask them to do a lot in the interview process before you ever have a conversation with them. Okay, another benefit of working with a recruiter is skilled to help figure out the challenges that come up in the process. Some hiring is a piece of cake. It moves simple, it's fast. Other times you look at it and you say, okay, why aren't we getting the right candidates? And a recruiter can have the time and skill to dig into everything. So for example here, we had a job in the past that made sense on paper. And when we put it out there, it was not attracting the right candidates. And we're like, what is going on? And what we then identified when we did a little bit more research was the job title was a job title that was being used heavily in another industry. So the people that were seeing our job were people looking for this job title, and this other industry was so dominant with the amount of jobs that were out there. They're like, well, this isn't the right fit. So our job posting was doing exactly like it should. It was turning away and making it so people who weren't the right fit weren't applying. But the problem was the people that we needed to see it weren't seeing the job. So, because even though it was a common job title in our industry that we were recruiting in, it just wasn't showing up properly on the job boards. But we were able to identify that because we had the time and knowledge to do this. And so then we said, okay, if this is a problem, how do we solve it? And we were able to then identify what should the position be called on the job boards to get in front of the right candidates, even if we call it something different internally. And when we made that change, we then got qualified candidates right away. So a recruiter, when you work with them, when you delegate the hiring to the right person instead of trying to do it on your own, has the time, energy, and knowledge to be able to identify the problems. Another case being that sometimes what we write or what we put on a job posting makes sense to us because we're closest to it. Where I could say, all right, my client told me they want XYZ, their company flows like this and everything. And I put together these sentences and it reads well to me and it reads well to the client because we know exactly what we're saying there. But when someone else reads it, they interpret it differently. So there was a time where the candidates that we were getting in just weren't 100% right. But based on the candidates that were coming in, I was able to look at that and say, oh, this is being interpreted differently than we meant for it to be interpreted. So let's change this sentence. And when that sentence was changed, we were able to get the right candidates into the process. And lastly, before we wrap up, because I know this is getting very, very long for one of the shorter episodes of the podcast, is when you hire the right person, when you delegate to the right person, it's their job to play detective. They have the skills. And what I mean by this is one thing we always talk about is just because a person's good at what they do does not mean they're right for you. You need to be able to identify if someone is right for you. So that doesn't mean that they just have experience in X, Y, Z. Does their experience line up with what you actually need, what you stated would be the markers of success in this position? When you work with a recruiter because they're playing detective, it allows your emotions to be removed from the process. You're not saying yes to someone that you shouldn't be hiring. You're not saying no to someone for biased reasons, that someone is able to actually put forth the right candidates that you should be hiring, that we've already proven for up to a certain extent that they have certain skills that are needed to be successful. So as a recruiter, we get to play detective. We get to say, all right, well, they tell us they're good at this, but that's not actually supported by anything they say. And if you listen to what they say here, and here, it shows that this is how they actually operate in these areas. So you don't have to worry about gaining those skills. So a recruiter has many, many benefits that actually make it so a lot of times it is worth the cost. There are so many benefits of working with a recruiter, but like I said, if you don't want to work with a recruiter, or right now it's really not in your budget to work with a recruiter, then you still need to make sure you're doing your due diligence to learn how to properly recruit candidates on your own. Because a lot of times, when I'm talking to business owners, they are worried about finding the right person. They are worried about hiring the wrong person who's going to come in and screw things up and be a waste of money. So if that is similar, if you've ever said, maybe I shouldn't hire, or the hiring process drives me crazy because I always get the wrong people, and you fear that someone is going to fail to do the job that you want them to do, then why aren't you doing everything possible to ensure you are finding the right person? So that's either by learning how to not stand in your own way and get the support that you need, or by hiring the expert that can help you recruit the person that you need. It's just like everything else in our business. We reach a point in our business where it's no longer worth our time to learn everything and we need to delegate. But there's other points in our business where we need to learn. So if you are not the expert, you need to learn or you need to delegate. So figure it out, and growing your team can help you with both. Are you ready to hire a new team member for your business and you want to ensure you hire the person who can succeed in the role, make you happy, and positively impact your bottom line? Then let's talk and see how growing your team can help you master the art of hiring. Through bespoke hiring frameworks and comprehensive guidance, you will learn how to attract candidates who have the passion you desire and the skills needed to succeed. At Growing Your Team, women entrepreneurs and leaders work with us to help them expand their unique businesses by teaching them how to hire like a pro. Let's connect and see how we can help you. Send me an email at jamie@growingyourteam.com. That's Jamie, Jamie, @growingyourteam.com, or head on over to growingyourteam.com/jumpstart, with jumpstart being all one word, and let's talk about how you can become a confident leader who hires right every single time.